Napoleon's message to Americans. What did he think of the USA? Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the most powerful figures in history, had strong opinions about the United States. He made decisions that shaped America's future, spoke about its leaders, and even wrote to a U.S. president. But what exactly did he say? In this video, we'll uncover Napoleon's true thoughts on the USA, his secret strategies, and how his actions influenced the rise of a new global power. Today, we uncover a side of Napoleon that few talk about: his relationship with America, his admiration for its ideals, and his secret moves that shaped U.S. history forever. Let's dive into the mind of the French emperor and explore his true thoughts on the USA. Napoleon and the Louisiana Purchase. 1803. One of the most significant moments connecting Napoleon and the U.S. was the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. At that time, France controlled a massive stretch of land in North America, known as Louisiana, which covered nearly a third of the modern United States. But Napoleon made a shocking decision. He sold it all to the Americans. Why? There were several reasons. First, Napoleon was preparing for a massive war against Britain, and he needed money to fund his military campaigns. Second, he had just lost control of Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, after a brutal slave revolt led by Toussaint Louverture. This crushed his dreams of building a French empire in the Americas. But there was another strategic reason, one that most people overlook. Napoleon didn't just sell Louisiana for money. He did it to strengthen the United States as a counterbalance to Britain. By giving the U.S. such a massive expansion, he helped create a powerful rival to his greatest enemy, the British Empire. In his own words, Napoleon later remarked, "This accession of territory affirms forever the power of the United States, and I have given England a maritime rival who, sooner or later, will humble her pride." Napoleon saw the United States as a weapon against Britain, a long-term move to shift the balance of power in the world. Napoleon's view on the American Revolution. Despite being an emperor, Napoleon had a surprising admiration for the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. He respected how the Americans overthrew British rule and established a republic. In his early years, Napoleon was fascinated by the Enlightenment ideas of liberty, democracy, and self-governance, the same ideals that fueled the birth of the United States. However, there was an irony in this admiration. While Napoleon respected the American fight for freedom, he himself became an absolute ruler. He crushed opposition in France, crowned himself emperor, and ruled with an iron fist. Yet, he still saw America as a great experiment in human governance. Some historians believe that if Napoleon had won his wars in Europe, he might have tried to model parts of France after the U.S., creating a mix of democracy and strong leadership. But in the end, his empire was built on war and conquest, while America's was built on expansion and trade. Napoleon's letter to James Madison. 1811. One of the least known but most interesting parts of Napoleon's relationship with the U.S. is a letter he wrote to President James Madison in 1811. At the time, the U.S. was on the verge of war with Britain, the War of 1812, and Napoleon saw an opportunity. He offered his support to the United States against Britain, seeing them as a potential ally. In the letter, he assured Madison that France would respect U.S. sovereignty and hinted at the possibility of military cooperation. Napoleon's offer was tempting, but the U.S. was cautious. They didn't want to be dragged into the Napoleonic Wars, which were tearing Europe apart. However, in an indirect way, Napoleon's conflict with Britain actually helped America win the War of 1812. Because Britain was so focused on fighting France, it couldn't put its full force against the Americans. Even though the U.S. and Napoleon never became official allies, his actions indirectly helped shape American victory. Napoleon's opinion on George Washington. One of the most fascinating insights into Napoleon's mind is what he thought about George Washington. Despite being a conqueror and dictator, Napoleon deeply respected Washington, the man who led the U.S. to independence. He once said, "Washington's character, his moral force, and his vision for the future make him one of the greatest men in history." This is a remarkable statement from a man who rarely admired others. Napoleon saw Washington as a leader who had the power to rule, but instead chose to step away from power voluntarily, something Napoleon himself could never do. While Washington set a precedent for democratic leadership, Napoleon went the opposite way. He seized power and held on to it until he was forced into exile. In a way, Napoleon may have envied Washington's ability to rule without fear of rebellion. Conclusion: what if Napoleon had won? Imagine for a moment, what if Napoleon had defeated Britain? What if his empire had lasted? Could he have formed an alliance with the US? Would he have shaped world history in a way where America and France stood together as global superpowers? Napoleon's relationship with America was complicated. He admired its ideals, but he was too much of a ruler to truly embrace them. He helped the US by selling Louisiana, but only to serve his own strategic goals. He supported American independence, but ultimately chose a different path for France. Today, Napoleon's influence on America is largely forgotten, but his decisions shaped its future in ways few people realize. His story reminds us that history is not just about battles and conquests. It's about choices, strategy, and the long game of power. So the next time you think of Napoleon, don't just picture the warrior on horseback. Think of the man who, in his own way, helped America become what it is today. What do you think? Could Napoleon and the US have been allies? Let us know in the comments below.